Start off with Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. It's a verse that didn't grab me this week. I shared it with a few people. I'm pretty sure I put it on the Facebook page. It says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." That word righteousness, to be set right with God, to be set in the right place, the right direction, everything's right with God. And as tradition, the first word, we're so good at reading it blessed, but just say it in regular people language. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst to be right with God. When you got that hunger and that thirst, they will be filled. So I'm asking you today, just think about it. Have you been thirsty lately? Have you been a little thirsty? It's okay if you have. So we're going to leap right into Mark chapter 5. Some of it I'm going to just talk through. I may pick up some verses and read them. But Jesus had been in one place, and now he's headed across the lake. It says in verse 1 of Mark chapter 5, they went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes. And next verse says, when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. So imagine, if you would, today, that you was born in a not so Jewishy area. You were looked down upon as a child. Your family was looked down upon as a child because you were not Jewish. Your family may have been the raisers of swine, which was considered horrendous by Jews. And imagine that all of a sudden you started seemingly having some mental problems. You started having bad dreams, and it just got worse and worse, and before you know it, you can't get your mind straight, and then before you know it, you've just gone completely mad. And you wake up in the night with these nightmares, and you think the only way that you can suppress some of that anxiety is to begin to find a sharp stone and cut yourself, and all these things go on and on and on with you to the point you're aware of what people are doing to you, but you can't do anything about it. You've lost total control. Imagine if you were in those shoes. People begin to put chains on your wrists and treat you like an animal and tie you to a tree, with those chains. And that's where this man was that came out to meet Jesus, that was full of impure spirits. His whole community had tried to restrain him. They had tried to chain him, and he became so empowered by these impure spirits that he could break them off. Darkness can give you some undue power. It can really give you strength to do stuff that you didn't think you could do. But it's not necessarily good stuff. And this man, it says that he lived among the tombs in verse 3, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. See, there's many times where people are going to come along and try to tell you ways to overcome your darkness, but the truth is people have no power over darkness. And I'm not talking about whether it's light outside or dark. I'm talking about darkness, evil, bad stuff. People have no power over darkness. Human beings, we have no power over it at all. It says, night and day among the tombs and the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. I got to that verse and I thought, okay, this man is full of demons. And these demons obviously have much control over him. Why would he go run to Jesus and fall at his feet? It's just something to ponder a minute. See, when Jesus is calling, there is nothing on the planet, there is nothing in the spiritual world that can keep him from you or you from him. When Jesus is calling, there is nothing that can keep you from him and him from you. Nothing. When evil seems to be abounding in your life, there is nothing inside of that evil that can keep you from going to the feet of Jesus. See, Jesus didn't go there by accident. And you heard me praying a while ago and thanking Jesus that he was already here before us, because God is omnipresent. He's always everywhere all the time. He's always working all the time. He's there. He's there. So it was no accident that Jesus had gotten in this boat, left the place he was at, and went across that lake. We call it the Sea of Galilee nowadays. He went across that huge, tremendous lake and landed at this specific place, and that man came to him. He came up to him and fell at his feet in front of him. And it says he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." He falls at Jesus' feet. Imagine that. And he says, the demons say through this man's mouth, "What do you want with me? What do you want with me, Son of the Most High God?" And then he prays. Y'all picked up on that? He prays to Jesus. He says, "In God's name, don't torture me." Okay, I want to pause there and say this. It is possible to identify who Jesus is and never identify with him. Y'all understand that? It is possible to identify who Jesus is. I got lots of different people in my life that admit that God's God, and they're all about God and God, talking about God and all that, but they don't identify with him. He's not necessarily been accepted as their personal Lord, Savior, and friend. It's possible to identify with Jesus and not identify with him. And it is possible to pray. It's possible to call on his name. It is possible and never know him. And it is possible to call on Jesus' name and not get our own way. Y'all notice this demon, and you'll soon see, was more than one of them, called on his name. They said, "In God's name, don't torture me." And they didn't get their way. Eventually that's coming. And we're not doing the whole demon study right now, or otherwise there's some other points we could point out. But I want you to understand this. Henry Blackaby said this, as I was just using that thought, that it's possible to call on God and not get our own way. in our own personal lives today. Henry Blackaby says this: God is under no obligation to resource what our plans are, but he will spare nothing from heaven to resource his plans for his church and or his people. Y'all follow that? God is under no obligation to resource our plans. You ever come up with some cool ideas for your own life and where you're going and everything, and then as life goes, it just don't pan out that way. God is under no obligation when you go to crying out to him, God, give me $1 million house and a $200,000 car. And whatever, I'm being ridiculous a little bit, but God is under no obligation to fulfill that unless it's his plan. His plan for you, number one, is to have a personal relationship with him. And when you have that personal relationship with him, you'll begin to see what it is God's plan is for you. He'll reveal it to you through Scripture and life circumstances and things that you end up wandering into, kind of you think you are when you're not really. Because God will resource his plan, and he will spare nothing to fulfill it, even if it means you seemingly getting off on the wrong exit. It might be God's plan for you to get off on the wrong exit. Yesterday I went into the IGA to get some peppers. What else did I go get? It was something, we were grilling some stuff. So I went in the IGA to get peppers, and I decided, I want to get a bag of pellets. I want some, and wood pellets. I want to try them. We're going to do some skewers. So I got a bag, and then as I'm leaving, it's raining. I mean, it's just slobbered down rain in Pillion. So there had been a man standing at the end of the register he was at, and he's just standing there waiting. And I decided, well, it's starting to let up. I'm going to head on out. And I passed this man. He said, buddy, have you tried them yet? Those are some really good pellets. And we get in this conversation about grilling. And then I got home and I told Darlene about it. So I should have got the man's name and number so we could talk some more about it, about grilling. But, looking back to this morning, it was no accident I ran into that man, and I missed an opportunity to get a hold of this man and share Jesus with him and all that good stuff. So I kind of wish I had paused just a minute more. You're going to have them moments, but God does direct our path, and I believe that man ended up at the feet of Jesus because God intended that. For Jesus, it says in verse 8 of chapter 5, he had said to him, come out of this man, you impure spirit. Then Jesus asked him, what is your name? My name is Legion, he replied, for we are many. And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. The demons begged Jesus, send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them. Side note, demons are territorial. He gave them permission. Notice that God has authority over the spiritual world. Just put that in your little sack and keep it. God has authority over the spiritual realm. He has all authority over it. He gave them permission to enter pigs. Apparently, they can't even go into pigs unless God gives them permission. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake where they were drowned. There must have been about 2,000 demons that had been in this one man. Those 10 in the pigs ran off and reported this to the town countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they had come to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Remember the title, Jesus Makes Things Right. There was this man who had been demon possessed his whole life. He had demonstrated how demon possessed he was, and they all come running out, having heard about their pigs, and they see this man sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness. The man hungered and he thirsted to be right, and he carried himself, in spite of the demons, to the feet of Jesus, and Jesus set it right. Is there something going on in your life now? Jesus can make it right. Whatever it is, wholly surrendering it all to Jesus can make it right. He can make it right if he so gives it permission to be right. Say you're diagnosed with something. You may go and ask Jesus, make this right. Jesus may decide not to, because Jesus has a plan. It just might be that Jesus has a plan for you to minister to somebody else through that time, to speak into somebody else's life about how, yeah, I might be got this, but Jesus has me. And no matter what the outcome of me in the body is, Jesus has me. And Jesus is, one day, he's going to set it right with me. I'm going to be in heaven. I'm going to be in a pure, perfect body. I'm going to be sitting before a pure, perfect, holy God. And I'm going to be singing great songs to the greatest. It says, those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. You will notice in your lifetime as a follower of Christ, there are going to be people who are more concerned about what they may have to give up than what they gain from Jesus. They'll become more concerned about, I don't know if I can do that because I would have to lose this. And I would have to lose that. And but if I do that, people are going to treat me this way or that way. Or I may even lose my job. There's all kind of what ifs. But the fact is, these people were more concerned about what they were losing than what Jesus had to offer them. Excuse me. I would challenge you today to know that and understand whatever you own on this planet is not nearly as valuable as a relationship with Christ. And it may hurt to lose some things that he wants you to lose, but it's not going to compare to the love you're going to gain through Jesus. It says then that as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man had been demon-possessed, who had been demon-possessed, begged to go with him. And I asked myself, have I been begging Jesus lately? Jesus, can I go with you? Can I go with you? But Jesus gave him a pass on that, and Jesus didn't let him go. It says, he tells him, go to your hometown, your own home, your own people, and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how much he had mercy on you. And I got to asking this question to myself. It says also in verse 20, so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. So I asked myself, or I thought about, if I began to tell of all Jesus had done for me, would people be amazed? And number two, I thought about what were they amazed about? These people were amazed because they knew this man. They knew what he had done. They knew what was going on in his life, and they saw what had happened, and they were amazed because that's not happening anymore. Now, suppose this. If he had gone with Jesus, hopped in the boat, and went to the other side of the lake, and told the crowd over there that was probably waiting, which was waiting, if he'd have went across the lake and told them, and they had never seen him, never heard of him or anything, they just said, yeah, sure. Sure you did. Sure you were demon possessed. You know, it would have been met with some skepticism, right? But because he didn't go with Jesus, see, Jesus knows what's best for your life, folks. He tells him, no, stay here and go tell your people. Because when he went and told them, it says what? They were amazed. They were amazed because they knew it. God knows what's best for your life when you think it's best. This man thought best for him to go with Jesus across this lake. But Jesus knew that no, you needed to stay here. And when Jesus again had crossed the boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. And then it says, then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. Okay, we got two people falling at the feet of Jesus, right? In that short period of time. And this one happened to be a church leader. He was a synagogue leader. And it says that he comes and he tells Jesus, Jesus, my daughter's dying. I need you to come and heal her so that she may stay alive. And it says that Jesus went with him in verse 24, and a large crowd followed him. Imagine if you were this guy and you had raised this little kid. Now, I done raised three of them, and I can only imagine how it must feel a little bit. But imagine, you've been watching this child get more and more ill all the time. You love this little girl, and she's got daddy wrapped around her finger, and you're watching her get more and more ill. And by the science of that day, what we've seen, what he's seen, he knows what she's got. If something don't change, she's gonna die. Based on the facts we know scientifically, she's gonna die. Imagine that you were a parent and you could see this playing out. And you've tried all the church rituals and everything else. And imagine, you've even gone to the synagogue and asked your other leader buddies to pray to God Almighty for your child, and nothing happens, and you've done everything right, and you begin to wrestle with that. I've been this churchgoer my whole life, and yet God don't care because my daughter's dying. Imagine if you were in that situation. That's where this man was. And it says he comes to Jesus. He had tried every other thing. He had tried the good life. He had tried doing everything just so, showing up to church every so often so I can call myself a regular attender. All of these things, taught Sunday school the whole 9 yards. And it says at that, he went to Jesus. And then it says when he tells Jesus what's going on, it says in verse 24, so Jesus went with him. And a large crowd followed and pressed all in around him. And then in the next verse, let's change gears. We're going to leave that guy sitting for a minute. It says in the next verse, this woman came to him, was there in that crowd, and had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. So she had been suffering with this infirmity as long as that little girl had been alive, because that little girl was 12 years old. So the length of this little girl's life up to that point, this woman had been suffering. I mean, she was probably anemic and everything else. She had been bleeding all this time. Now put yourselves in her shoes. What would you do? We would all say, we would go see Jesus, right? Okay, it says, she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she only grew worse. I watched it play out in my short life. There's all kind of people with all kind of problems, and they go seek all kind of solutions from all kind of doctors and all kind of therapists and all kind of other gurus. And you see on TV, and I hear on ads on Spotify about psychics and all these different sorts of things, and we think about the snake oil people back in the 1800s that was real big, and yet they sell snake oil all on TV now. You just take this and it'll make your life better. I got a thing of Super Beets yesterday, and hopefully it'll make me feel better. We're going to try it out, but I don't know. But it's kind of one of them things where you just take this and your life will get better and you'll feel young again. I see one on TV, this old man out mending a fence on his ranch. He's older than dirt, but he says he feels all rejuvenated and everything based on this product that's only been tested on 12 people. So anyway, y'all get my point. There's lots of people that's going to give you lots of solutions, lots of ways to spiritual peace and happiness, and all you got to do is this, and this. And some of them will even be in the church world, and they'll tell you, you pray this formula prayer every day, and your life's going to snap. It's going to get better. And when it don't get better, they're thinking, yeah, you didn't pray the formula prayer just right. You said one word wrong or something. I'm telling you, people's going to tell you all kind of stuff. The only answer to anything in life is found in this book. It's found in the Bible, and it is the God-inspired, God-breathed Word of God Himself. And that's the only place you're going to find the whole truth. Just wanted to jump on that soapbox a minute. She had spent, is sitting right there, sweetheart. She had sought everything else, and it says when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him, and I can picture her getting on her knees and crawling between people's legs to get up there so she could just barely nip the hem of his garment with her finger, because somewhere along the way she got in her head that Jesus was the answer. He was the way, he was the truth, and he was the life. Based on what she had already heard and seen, she says to herself, I got enough faith in him. I believe that he's God. I believe he's the Son of God. And I believe if I could just barely even nip the hem of his garment, that he is going to make things right. And sure enough, she crawls through this crowd, I can see her in her weakened state, struggling to get there, and then she manages to touch the edge of his garment, and immediately she could tell, and Jesus could too, that she had been made right. It says in verse 29, immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt her body that she was freed from suffering. Do you feel like you're in bondage to something? Do you feel that way ever? There's one answer. Jesus. He can set you free. He freed her. And that once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him, and he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" Jesus is so perceptive that he even knew that his clothes had been touched. And you're asking who touched you? Really? Really, Jesus? Like, they were talking down to him like they knew better than he did. See, I believe that Jesus wanted them to see, and he wanted her to confess. He wanted them to witness her confessing. And he says, it says that Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. He's looking around to see, is she going to stand up and testify to what God's already done in her life? Is she going to stand up and testify? Is she going to stand up and tell the whole world, this crowd right here, what Jesus has already done? Folks, I believe that Jesus is here to set things right, and when he does, I think we are obligated to tell somebody what he did. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, come and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. She didn't just tell him some of it. She didn't just kind of whimper around about it and say, well, I kind of accidentally fell into you, or none of that. See, the power of Jesus would only left the power of Jesus, remember? If he had to give demons permission to go into pigs, his power does not leave him unless he gave it permission. God already knew what was going to happen before that woman ever even started bleeding. God already knew it. I know he does because he's all-knowing. So God already knew it. God already knew that that woman was going to need Jesus. He sent Jesus there. And Jesus was in just the right place at just the right time. And he knew it was going to happen. But he wanted her, by faith, to come and touch him. And he said to her, daughter. And I find that interesting. He didn't just say woman or lady. Hey, lady. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Now, faith without works is dead. That's what it says in the book of James, right? Faith without work is dead. Real faith is a visible faith. You can write that down, okay? Real faith is visible. It's not just talking about it in here and in the parking lot and every now and then around work or something. It's actually putting some feet on it. Actually doing what you're talking about. Being kind to people and all this kind of kumbaya stuff. It is actually doing something. That's what real faith is doing what you're talking about. I mean, I can stand here all day and say, yep, I know if I go over there and flip that other light switch, the rest of them lights will come on. And then I just stand here. And I never go flip that light switch. Because in my heart, I really don't know for sure, and I really don't believe that if I flip that switch, the lights come on. And I've never demonstrated that because I never went and flipped the switch. Some folks up north get a tickle out of us because we talk about turning on the lights. Because our the way we say turn on the lights and that kind of stuff. From what I gather, the northern folks I talk about say it different. So, but anyway, the point is I actually got to put some shoes on and walk that way if I'm going to actually demonstrate the faith that I say I have. He calls her daughter because her faith was already there. Her faith was already there. She didn't have to go through a ritual prayer and a whole church ritual or any of that. She had, based on what she knew about Jesus, she had went after Jesus, she pursued Jesus, and she trusted that his power and his authority could overcome the problems she had in her life. And I'm here to tell you, the biggest problem that humans have in their life right now is sin. Let's just call it what it is. A duck's a duck. Sin is sin. And the biggest problem we have for all of eternity is sin. And sin is going to cause, can somebody tell me what sin's going to cause? Death. It's going to cause death. So my big problem is being dead in my sin, right? That's my biggest problem. Jesus has already fixed that. He's already outdone death, and he's already outdone sin. All I've got to do is admit that he did that for me. And I got to put some faith shoes on and start walking that way. He called her daughter because she had already done it. Her actions showed her admission, her confession. What they saw was based on their own understanding. What these people had seen was based on their own understanding. See, while Jesus was still speaking to this woman, some people came up from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader, the man with the 12-year-old daughter, and they said, your daughter's dead already. There's no need. Why bother to teach her anymore? Based on what they understood and knew about science and what was going on, she was dead. And overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, don't be afraid, just believe. And what they were saying, what he was saying is, you just believe that I can make it right. And he didn't let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, and the brother of James. And when they came to the home, the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. And when he went in and said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. And here you go, Jesus set things right. He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha koum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. We're going to wrap it up like this, y'all. Once again, Jesus set things right. We got three situations. One of them, he showed authority and power over demonic forces. He has the authority over our spiritual well-being. Y'all understand that? You are not just flesh and blood. You are spirit and flesh right this minute. God has the authority over your spirit, over your soul. God had, in the event with this woman, she had an infirmity. God has the authority over sickness. He has authority over sickness. And then number three, God has authority over death. He has authority over death, y'all. That's pretty amazing, right? And Jesus can set it right in all three worlds. Here's the way I see this. I've heard somebody else say this too. We get in our head. Science says you can't get up from being dead. When you're dead, you're dead. You're dead all the way. Especially like Lazarus been dead 3 days or 4 days or whatever it was. You know, science says when they've quit breathing and drawn cold, they're dead, right? Jesus has authority over that kind of dead. And we think we need Jesus to come fix it. We need Jesus to undo what's normal. See, we think miracles is Jesus overcoming what's normal. Y'all with me? Okay, in this woman's life, she needed Jesus to have authority over what was normal. Science said normally she gonna die. She's going to die. Science said so. In this little girl's life, science says she's dead all the way. Science and psychologists would say with this guy, there's no hope for him. He's schizophrenic. I'm not saying every schizophrenic person is demon possessed. That's not what I'm saying. But nowadays, that's what they would say. Or they're just really bad, terribly mentally unstable, uncontrollable. We're going to put them in this room. Science says we can't fix that person. That's why we're going to put them in this room to keep them from hurting themselves and others. Science says all this stuff. What's normal, right? But here's the thing. Normally, in God's perfect world, there was no demon possession, there was no illness, there was no death. There was none of that. Y'all hear me carefully. That was normal. That was God. That's the way it was supposed to be. But along came sin, and there became demon possession and death and all kind of illnesses and struggles financially and emotionally, physically, all that stuff. Relationally, the whole 9 yards. That is not normal. That's abnormal, and God came to put it right. To set it back up right where it's supposed to be. Everything else outside of God is abnormal. It's out of whack. It's messed up. Our relationship problems with our families and all that kind of stuff, that's messed up. That wasn't normal. Though we see it happening all the time to the point we just think it's normal. Something that really bugs me really bad. I'm going to get on my soapbox. When they show homosexual people on TV kissing each other in the mouth and all these kind of things, y'all, that's not normal. That's out of whack. But they're attempting more and more and more to, in your mind, make it appear and seem normal. Now, if you got any of those kind of tendencies or anything, I'm here to tell you that might be your tendency, but for God's normal, He came to make it right, to fix it for you, to set it back up right, because He loves you. And if He didn't love you, He would not have died and shed His perfect blood for it. God came to make things normal again, not to create what we call miracles. And we get in our mind, yeah, God did something out of the norm to make this happen in our life. When really He's the kind of God, that's normal for God, is to bring stuff back up to where it should be. Do y'all agree? Okay, so based upon that scripture, then I got to start living my life like I'm in an abnormal situation. I'm in an abnormal world, and I'm going to trust my God to bring it back to normal, to where it was. Have you trusted Him with that in your life today? And if it might seem like, well, I've been praying for years over this situation. God hadn't made it normal, brought it back yet. It's coming. You got to have the faith of that woman who was bleeding to death. You got to have that kind of faith that even if I could just touch the hem of his garment, I know that his power and authority over this is enough to do it. And he might not do it right here in your lifetime, but sooner or later, God will set it right. God will set it right. And we got to have faith in him that he's going to do it.